Hello, everybody. Greetings from Serbia. I want to welcome everybody that already joined us. And I see people from Belgium, Croatia, Serbia, Sweden, so probably more countries, artists, curators, art historians, and just art lovers as well. So I'm very happy to welcome everybody to 65th edition of Art Talks, named Art ćakula in original Croatian language. And tonight with us is Stef Van Bellingen from Belgium. He is curator of VART Contemporary Art Platform. And I first want to say I met Stef when I first came to Belgium, to live in Belgium 5 years ago. And ever since then, he was a really great help for me. So, and I'm really grateful he joined us today and share some of his visions and activities and everything that partly I already know about, but I'm still eager to hear more. So thank you, Stef.
Thank you, Vesna.
I think there was no better person I could have met 5 years ago when I came there. Okay, for those who doesn't know, my name is Vesna Opavsky. I'm an artist from Serbia, partly living in Belgium. And now, before we start with Stef's presentations, I can introduce him a little bit more. This is just a regular part we always do. So Stef Van Bellingen has been active as a curator since the early 90s and organized exhibitions in Brussels, Dakar, Dublin, London, Ljubljana, Hague, Venice, Vienna, etc. He tries to develop long-term relations and collaborations with artists and art institutes. Due to his mixed roots, his Caribbean origin, he's interested in a more comparative perspective on art history, and because of his archaeological studies, the topic of deep time also is a point of interest. He studied archaeology and art history at University of Ghent and started his career at SMAC in Ghent with several artistic collaborations with Jan Hout, I think, yeah. In 2006, he founded VARP, a contemporary art platform in Sint-Niklaas, Belgian town I always also live in, next to Antwerp, between Antwerp and Ghent. And he grew up there, so that was his wish. He will tell us more about that later. And VARP, I will just say a few things more. VARP is an acronym of that stands from Vassland Artistic Projects, and Vassland is a region that Sint-Niklaas is located in. The verb varping refers to the creative transformation of an environment starting from a single point. VARP houses several exhibition spaces and residency with a focus on talent development, which enables us to establish, enables them to establish long-term relations with the artists. And about those projects and exhibitions and the relations with artists, Stef will be talking more about starting soon. But still, I just want to tell he's a permanent member of assessment committee of Flemish community, that's multidisciplinary art, chairman purchase commission Flemish parliament, member General Assembly Muhka in Antwerp, board member of dance company Kunstwerk Antwerp, and advisory member of Art Coach magazine, cultural ambassador of Sint-Niklaas, jury member of Make Eindhoven and Fire Station Studies Dublin, and then also a permanent jury member of New Technological Art Award from the Zebrastrat in Ghent. So I think I didn't take too long of your time, Stef, and I am really happy you are here today and tonight, this evening. So for now, you have a word. Everybody else can write some comments and questions already in the chat box that we will ask later. And after the presentation, it's time for more questions you can ask direct. And welcome again to our Art ćakula Art Talk communities. And Stef, you have the screen. I will share some images.
Thank you, Vesna. Yes, I'm quite honored to be honest, because VARP is really a very small organization. And thanks to Vesna, it becomes more international, and this always was our ambition. I'm sorry that my voice might sound a bit metallic, and also that I look a bit bluish. It's because of the spot I installed, but it gives like a blue light. And also, Vesna, thank you very much for handling the images, because I thought if we share some images, if you can look at some photos, it gives a better idea of at first our structure. Then perhaps I might tell a bit about myself very briefly, and then I would come to major projects, and that is the portfolio format. And I think this might be interesting in the future for all of us, because you can get included into this format, or at least this is one of our ambitions. And afterwards, of course, I'm very glad to answer your questions, but I will also listen to your suggestions and your experiences, because I think this is the main thing why we are together here in this Zoom. So the first image you see is the image of the location we have. And at first in 2006, we started with nothing. We just started with a friendship between some art addicts that were living in Sint-Niklaas, so this quite small town between Antwerp and Ghent. So in the middle of, but in fact also nowhere, you could say, because the bigger cultural cities are looked at and smaller cities are less important. But of course, there are advantages also to small cities. So we started with nothing, a friendship for art. And after 1 year, we asked the city, Sint-Niklaas, if they would give us a ruin. And this ruin was a horse's stable. And we restored it. And this was our first location that we had for ourselves. But then, and a jump, in 2012, we got quite lucky, you need it in life. And there was a local artist who was a real sympathizer of our organization. And he died in 2012. And then they found this will. And in this will, it was stipulated that Waap would inherit his house. And this is the front of the house you see. So it's a late 19th century house where he was living, and he was quite rich. But he was rich not because of his art, but because of his parents. His parents were very wealthy persons. And Jan Buitaert owned 15 houses like the one you see over here. All the other houses and the money went to the family, but we inherited this house. So if you go to the next photo, the next image, we will enter and they will see my daughter. She's very important, as a lot of volunteers we have, because we really depend on what other people are able to give us. They can give us some time, they can give us some knowledge, they can give us suggestions. So volunteers are really a very important part of our organization. But let's go to the next image. I will run through these images. It just gives you an idea of the infrastructure we have, the location we have. This is the bar that we installed. And remarkable about the bar is that the material that we use to install this bar comes from exhibitions. So walls we built for exhibitions, sandwich panels that we used are all recycled and used in this bar. If we go to the next image, we will enter the garden. The garden is quite large and magnificent in the center, really, of Sint-Niklaas. You can understand that because of this garden, we attract an audience that is really interested in art, but it's also quite open to persons that, in fact, are not involved in art. So we get a quite diverse group of persons that visit our exhibitions or just pass by or want to sit in the garden and drink a glass over there. Because in the summer, we have performances over there, there are concerts, and it's really used, this garden, as a meeting space. And the next image is also a view in the garden, but from another angle. And you can see that we also use the roof sometimes. So it's a migrant, a sculpture that is put on the roof. It's an inflatable. But you see there's a lot of green in the garden itself. So it's really a place to relax and to reflect. The next image is a series of images I'm going to show you of the exhibition spaces. So this is the main exhibition space. So it's also the main part of the house. And it is particularly this part of the house where Jan Buita, this artist who we inherited the house from, lived. He was quite wealthy, but at the other hand, he was living, in fact, a bit like a monk. The house in itself was really in a very bad state when we inherited it. And at one point he was rich, but on the other hand, he was in fact a poor person, because he could not spend his money. A very strange thing. He could not spend his money. So the first part of the exhibition space. Let's have another look in the next image, or with the next image, as another angle of this space. We like green and flowers in our exhibition spaces because it gives a smell also to the location. And this is something that we quite like, to be honest. Another image with another exhibition space. So it's the space adjacent to the garden. And then let's just move on to the next image. It's the first floor of this same space that you have seen. And then let's just move on, Vesna, to the next image. And this is the first floor, but of the main house. So in fact, we use about 4 exhibition spaces on a regular basis, and they have about 60 to 80 square meters as a surface. So it gives you an atmosphere of a house. It's with parts, fragments that were already over there. So it's not completely a white cube. So you always go in dialogue with the building or fragments of the building from the past in itself, which makes, of course, that you get immediately a completely different atmosphere in this building. And the next image is an image of our residency. And our residency is the most recent part of the building that we've been able to restore, because it was really a ruin. And here also you can see that the curtains come from flags that we used for our exhibition. So it's really a mindset to reuse a material, to recycle a material. It is a part of what we do. It's cheap, but at the same time, you can understand that the ecological elements play a part in how we try to handle what we do. The residency in itself is for one person or a couple. We believe in micro residencies because in the usual programs of residencies, they last for 3 months, they last for sometimes half a year. But most of the artists are not able to leave their job, to leave their family for more than a few weeks. So this is why we make the choice for micro residencies. And we believe in what you could call a recurring status. You come for a week, you come for a fortnight, but you can return. And I think it's also a better way to try to develop relations with artists. If you come several times, you try to build towards something or nothing. That's also possible. You can just come because you're a very nice person. But at the same time, we believe that it takes sometimes a few years before you really have a relationship with an artist. And an artist is always also a person. So I believe a little bit in what the Documenta team was telling. One of their mottos was make friends, not art. So make friends, not art. Of course, we want to make art also. We believe that the art is very important, but making friends or friendship is as important, I think. If you go to the next image, you will see the studio, the attic, where the artworks of Jan Buitaert, the artists who lived over there, are stocked. But at the same time, it's a location where artists, if they are at our residency, can work, and they can share it with local artists if they want. So the most important question that is for me very fundamental about the residency, about the working with the artists, is not the formats that already exist. We all know what kind of formats they are. They are fantastic, but they are not to the scale of our organization. So the fundamental question that we have is, what in fact is hospitality? For us, this is the most fundamental thing that we try to tackle in the way we work. And with these images, you have an idea of the location we have, of the infrastructure. And then I've got two other images, or few images that I would use to tell something about myself, because you've got more information about official things that are usually used in a CV. But when Vesna was talking about mixed roots, well, it also goes for our family. This is a photo of myself with my sister. It's a photo my sister and myself like very much. Of course, I've mixed roots, but in a very big part in my life, it was a bit of a mystery also. Until I was 12 years old, I had the French nationality, because Martinique, where my mother comes from, is a French colony. So until I was 12, I had a French identity or nationality, but I didn't know myself. It was only when we had to go to court to change this that I was told that I had a French nationality, and that it would be changed to a Belgian nationality. But if I go back to my family, in our family, every family member is adopted. So we come from different parts in the world, and this explains my interest in other countries and other continents, because it was already in our family itself. Another important thing about my sister and myself is that we both went to the academy. So we've got a structure in Belgium where you can go to the academy from the age of 6. So I went to the academy, music school also, my sister also, but I didn't become an artist, and my sister became an artist. At a certain moment, I realized I was very good in copying things. I could make wonderful drawings, but I knew that I was copying things. And my sister was completely different. My sister could create. So from an early age, I understood that there was a difference between copying things and creating things. So the difference between an artist and a non-artist was very early in my life clear for me. However, I really wanted to get involved in art, and this is why I started organizing exhibitions. But when I started organizing exhibitions, the word or the concept curator was in fact not used. I just organized an exhibition and found out that this was something that I liked very much and that I would like to continue in my life. And since I have been organizing exhibitions. But at the same time, when I was going to the academy, so it was on Wednesday afternoons and on Saturdays was for children. But at the same time, I started to do sports. So there's another very important thing for me, sports, because I learned from sports what top means. So I was in contact with the best athletes, the best sporters on a Belgian level, on a European level, and I really learned a lot from this. I learned about borders and limits. Borders are things you can cross. Limits are absolute. You can't cross a limit. But if you extend this, you can also use this, for instance, on ethical questions. There are borders that you can pass, but there are also limits, and they are quite important. They can be obstacles, they can be absolute. But also learned a lot about or questioned what is talent, in fact, and what do you do with talent? What is progress? And sometimes you have less talent, but you've got a lot of will, a lot of character to make progress. You learn also about how to formulate for yourself goals. Also, what can you absorb? How do you handle misfortune? How do you create respect for another one? And I was doing pole vault, but more important, I was in decathlon. So this is a competition that lasts for 2 days. It's only the only competition where at the end, it's not only the first three that run their tour of honor, but it's everybody involved in the decathlon. And this is something what I find very beautiful. At the same time, we are in a competition, but in the end, we all do it together. And this is something that I never forget. And this is something that I really use as something fundamental for the portfolio days and the extended version of it, the artist village. So if we go to the next image, Vesna, it's a bit of a strange image, perhaps. First you saw twitchers, so bird watchers. Mm-hmm. The bird watchers, the twitchers, well, this image. Bird watchers, twitchers are triggered by a very rare bird. And then you see like this group of persons trying to spot this bird. And if you compare it with the next image, almost the same happens when the museum in Antwerp, the Museum of Fine Arts, was after a very long period of restoration, was going to be reopened again. The first big painting of Rubens was brought in. And for me, it was the same as the twitchers, as the bird spotters. And I want to use this as a general thing for the art also. In most of the cases, people are interested in top names, top art pieces, but the field in itself is much larger and much richer. So, of course, bird watchers and twitchers are interesting, but it's not the only thing. It goes for me also towards sport and art. Of course, I like top, but sometimes top is over the top. And I'm interested in a much broader field than only the big names, although I've worked with the bigger names, but I found it more fascinating to work with a broader field, to be honest. And then the last elements, if it doesn't take too long, are about these portfolio days and the extended version of the artist village, or what we call the artist village. After an open call, we select artists, and they have conversations, one-on-one conversations. They last 45 minutes, because as a curator, of course, you can organize exhibitions, and it's a very important part of what you do as a curator or as an art organization. But there are lots and lots of more needs for the artist. And one of them is how to further develop your potential, and then ask myself, how can I help to unlock the potential of the artist? And there was also a very big need for artists to meet other artists, to meet other professionals in the art world. So I started organizing these portfolio days, and I've been doing this since 2007. So artists talk with curators, with critics, with museum directors, with more mature artists, sometimes with the gallery owners, with the psychoanalysts, with the architects, to broaden, in fact, the content of their work. And this is one of the images of the portfolio day that we organized earlier this year. It was in the garden and the premises of WAP. You also see that we try to realize a mix with these portfolio days. And you also see that there really are one-on-one conversations, 45 minutes, talking about your work. Everybody has got like another angle to attack or to start from. Indeed, the next image you see is after a few years, started in 2007 with the portfolio days. It was really like one day. But then to be able to invite more artists from abroad, I started organizing what I call the artist village. Sorry. And the artist village, the first edition was in Sint-Niklaas. You see the containers in the back and the tents where artists were sleeping. We were staying for 1 week, and then having the conversations in the tent or in the open air. The next image is another artist village. This one is in Genk, and it's an anecdotal element, but in the front you see a very strange kind of a caravan. It's a palomino. The palomino was in fact in not a very good shape, but it became what we told the caravan of luck. Artists that stayed over there, some of them became quite famous. So it was a caravan of luck, but if you were staying in that caravan, you had the least comfort. You had to stay over there with 3 or 4 persons. It's another thing that makes it so wonderful, because artists, about 20 artists from all over the world, gather together during 1 week. Let's go to the next image. This is in Bruges, for instance. So we always depend on the location to organize an artist village. I need more money, so I have to work with partners that can bring in money and infrastructure. but it's always challenging to organize it at another location with other partners. I have to drink something. Can we go to the
video?
Yeah, it's a video. We'll have a look at it for like 1 minute. It's the beginning of the meetings in Eindhoven. Mick Eindhoven is really very supporting a partner of it. And you just see that curators, very young curator here on Oswald, museum directors, directors of art schools, psychoanalysts, you see here at the left, Hannah Oswald, again from Slovenia, from the Penningse Foundation, the director, from Dublin, Rantit Jan, director now of the Academy in The Hague, Philippe, psychoanalyst, yeah, me, and we organized it at Make Eindhoven. And it just gives you an idea of what is happening over there. It's really not spectacular. It's just fundamental, getting a dialogue or trying to dialogue with the artists. And if you go to the next image, Vesna, you will see that, yeah, you will see that what is also a crucial part of these meetings, even if they last only for 1 day, is the informal moments. Having food together, preparing the food. We work with a team every time that prepares the food. The food really has to be good. It's something that you have to look forward to, because it might happen that some conversations, yeah, you don't get a good connection, that you get a comment that is perhaps a bit negative, although we try really to be constructive. As I told you, we just try to unlock the potential of the artist on the base of the content of the base of what the artist is telling us. So it's a telling, and it's listening, and it's giving suggestions, a comment, recommendations, etc. If you go to the next image, then you see, yeah, that we are just eating together, and it might seem like yeah, something that is random, but perhaps this is the most important part of these meetings, because if here in Belgium you go to the opening of an exhibition, in most of the cases we know the names of other curators or other persons that are working in this field, but in the majority of these meetings we don't have real context. We don't know what they like to eat, how they act, how they handle in a different situation. So these informal moments are perhaps the most crucial, and they change the whole atmosphere, because at first you might think that it's only with these museum curators, with these critics, etc. That is only a top-down formula, but it's not. The most important are the lateral relations between the several artists, but also between the commentators, as I call them, because it is in this way that we can try to create a kind of community. And in the next image, you see like the spontaneous actions of artists. So after 5 or 6 conversations you have that day, after lectures in the evening, most of the artists are so keen to keep on talking, to present work of themselves to other artists, that they gather spontaneously. So sometimes we really have to ask to stop. Sometimes it's really the case that they talk not almost completely through the night, but they get up earlier also, just to be able to talk with each other. So in these artist villages, we have artists from Kathmandu, from Canada, from Mexico, from China, from Africa, but not a lot. It's something that we really still have to improve. And now our next aim, of course, is to get in contact, more in contact with artists and curators and professionals from the Balkans. And this is why I'm so glad, of course, that I can explain some of the things that we do. Just a few more images and then I will stop. Yeah, this is in the Artist Village 2015 in Bruges, because over there we also use the caravans and the tents, etc. But there was a storm. There's something that always happens. There is always, during that week or during a weekend, there is always a problem that has to be solved. And with this storm, there was a kind of a crisis because everything was falling down. And at the same time, it's like going on holidays. If nothing happens on your holiday, you might not remember this holiday. But it's a disaster. It is the crisis, in fact, that you will remember. But not only the crisis, it's how you try to solve it. And this every time something is happening, and it stimulates the dynamic of that group really in a wonderful way. So let's go to, and it's also already tested. Let's go to the another video, a small part perhaps of it at the beginning. The next question, of course, is if you have these meetings, how will you continue? How will you maintain and develop the contacts that you have had? So at a certain moment, we started organizing events or meetings also after this portfolio meetings or after the artist village, because what I find important is not so much here the Jason Moran, the jazz musician, but he's using a text of Adrian Piper. And Adrian Piper says, in fact, artists ought to be writing. Perhaps they ought to be writing, but what they should do for certain is go in dialogue with other persons and reflect about their work. So let's just listen for 1 minute perhaps to Jason Moran and Adrian Piper.
Okay, I will play the video. You just stop me if there is no sound. If there is a sound, we will just keep watching.
Yeah.
What their presuppositions making the work are, and related things. If artists' intentions and ideas were...
There's not a lot of sound, I think.
Sorry?
I don't hear a lot.
Does anybody hear?
Ne, jako je tiho.
Yeah, maybe it's so quiet. I will just try, give me a second, maybe I can try to reshare it, so maybe we will not have a problem.
Or perhaps you can see it as a task for yourself to go to YouTube afterwards and listen to Jason Moran, artists ought to be writing, because it's also very beautiful. It's also very beautiful to listen to. So,
yeah, okay, then
the next images, Vesna, then I will close down.
Yeah. You will give us a link, so we will publish also on Art Talks page, you know. So.
Yeah, okay, yeah, fine.
Sharing, just a second. Yeah, now I stopped and then.
I'm so glad that you're doing this, Vesna.
Yeah, but we already had the first mistake.
I would never be able to present all these images.
It's a pleasure.
So we've got the a portfolio day, so portfolio day or portfolio weekend, and then the extended version, an artist village, but in fact it's all the same. There are meetings between artists and art workers, you could say, but the main goal is to develop relations between all of these persons on a long-term base. And sometimes it happens in a very spontaneous way, of course. But now, since this year, I started with what we call the Socratic dialogues. So there are meetings between a small group of artists or persons that are interested in this. And it's not a debate. So you don't defend an opinion. You're just open to listen to other ones and let develop your opinion, your vision on a certain topic. And it can start from a very simple question. One of the questions that we started from is, for example, do artists need others? So it's really very simple a question. And then for about 1 hour, 1 hour and a half to 2 hours, we just try to analyze this question and reflect on it and talk about it. And I found this very important for artists to get broader perspectives, but also to listen to other artists again. And yeah, I found it a quite interesting way to connect artists again. Of course, it has its limits, because if you want to do this in a physical way, yeah, then artists from example Canada are not able to join, of course, but I'm looking for new ways to connect artists also after the portfolio days or the artist village that we've developed. From these portfolio days, of course, there are other things that develop from it. So if you go to the next image, you will see this is, for example, Merel, a young artist. She was at one of our portfolio days. Afterwards, these artists were invited to have an exhibition at our location. But now with Merel and also Geerke, who was at another portfolio day, and 2 other a bit older artists, we have started up a project with a reflection on reality. And this is supported also by Make Eindhoven, where they can produce work, and the production or the result of these works will be presented at another location, another partner, and this is the Fabriek Eindhoven. The Fabriek means there's a factory Eindhoven, and it is an organization. It is in fact a dialogue. It is a collaboration between 3 organizations with 4 artists in it. And the last image that I would like to share with you is that sometimes you're also able to realize dreams of artists. I always ask an artist, what is your dream? What would you like to realize? What would you be eager on to develop? And Adrien Tircio, who was at the Artist Village in 2010, was invited to the Coup de Ville exhibition. So we've got a regular program of exhibitions during the year, but every 3 to sometimes 4 years, we have a more large scale exhibition in Sint-Niklaas, sometimes also in other cities, to be honest. And I asked him, what would you like to realize in your career, Adrien? And he said, I would like to build a bridge once in my life. And we were able in 2013 to realize a bridge. The bridge starts from the building on the right in this photo. It's a school, and goes to the other side, but it will never get connected. And it is his vision on what education is. So other ones, or with the help of others, you can try to build a bridge, but the last step is the step you always have to take yourself, and is a step that might be a risk, but you have to be open for this risk. And I still find it a very beautiful metaphor of how we could develop as an organization, as a human beings, of course. So it took me a bit longer than foreseen. So I hope you get some questions from what I was telling you.
Yeah, of course. I first want to thank you, Stef. You, when we were watching just before the video from Portfolio Days, you said it doesn't look impressive. For me, as an artist, it looked really impressive when I heard that a young artist can get that kind of support. Because especially here in our region, I can also say on academy, it's not organized in that way that you can get all the info and soft skills you will really need if you want to be really active and artist, you know. So thank you very much. Before I ask some questions, I know we got a lot of comments here, and I want maybe to read. Yeah, it's just mostly hello. I see Nina is sending regards from Croatia, and also Ljubica, and then Ivana, our founder of Art Talk and Art ćakula, and then also Željko is saying hello. So before we get some other questions, and before I let other present artists and curators to ask something, I just want you maybe to ask, because you mentioned that residency program, what is the practice? Who came till now there? Are there all the artists that you are already related to, you cooperated before, or some you can give some call for artists sometimes?
Well, we wanted to start up this program in 2020, but of course it had to be postponed, and in fact we missed our start. But since then, there have been several artists that stayed at the residency. But you're right, it's correct. Most of the artists were artists that we already knew, that we already had a relation with a few exceptions, because there were suggestions from other organizations. They pointed to our location or the way how we were, because when you are at our residency, you're a bit in an isolation, but we try to connect you with other artists that we know, and if possible, we try to organize a tailor-made program for you. So with persons, with professionals in the cultural field that might, like a portfolio day, that might broaden up your mind, give input and feedback to your practice. But I would invite you to follow us on Instagram. It's my daughter, she's listening also. So it's my daughter that is responsible for our Instagram account. And if she agrees, because she has to do the labor in this sense, we perhaps should try to make more open calls for our program for the residency. So follow us on Instagram, and then for sure in January we will have like a small open call for like this micro residency. But if you are interested, think about hospitality. So what could we do? So what could we develop? It could be a combination of things. So we've got a basic idea, but the idea can be developed with all of you also, you see, because it's not like already a fixed model that we have. And I think we should think about how can we improve mobility? How will we do this with not a lot of money, but still when we are eager to meet and to connect, we will find a way, you see. So let's say that it's also open how we could develop this program.
It is great to hear, Stef. And is it open just for visual artists, or there were some musicians also present? Or
yeah, so there were musicians because it was related to programs that we were developing. There were also writers, and this was also in connection with the topics that we were working on. The main part of the residency should be for visual artists, because this is really our core business, of course. But if musicians or writers or other cultural phenomena, can be scientists also. Scientists can be interesting, but then we should find a link to our program.
That's really nice to hear. So everybody that can contribute to the projects you can develop together. Now everybody can ask something, but first I will read now a few comments we got. Matilda Müller from Croatia. She says, greetings to everyone. I joined later than I planned, but I will look at everything in detail in the video. I like the idea of a bridge, especially that it was realized, and I was able to see that. Thanks for the presentation. Greetings from Croatia. And Lea Čech, also a member of Art Ćakula from Croatia, asks, how do you select the people who talk to artists? What fields are they in, and why psychoanalysts?
Yeah, the selection of what we call commentators. Well, sometimes they are just people that I meet and that I find interesting. That I find interesting for artists, because to give you an example, Jan Hoed was the most famous museum director in Belgium and the northern part of Europe, perhaps. He organized Documenta. He had several very big exhibitions that he organized. But as a commentator towards artists, he was not good. So it does not depend on the function and the name, but it depends on the empathy you can have towards an artist. That's really very crucial in the selection. We don't go for big names or important functions alone. It's the empathy you have. What we expect from the artist is also that they are approachable, so that you are open, because you have to be open that someone comes between yourself as an artist, and your artwork. It's not like a wig, it's not like a split, but you allow another entity to go in dialogue with yourself and your artwork. So these are very important elements. So for this reason, to give you an example, once I invited someone, because I was at Documenta, and in the artwork, sometimes we are consumers also. We go into a space, I've seen it, the next one. So because I've got a schedule, I have to see everything, but I don't give time to the art pieces. So I met someone who was really taking time to look at the art pieces in an exhibition. And she was an art critic from France. She was an elderly lady, but I found her so interesting, so empathic towards art, that I invited her for the artist village. Although I barely knew her. I really barely knew her, but I thought she's an interesting person. And sometimes it's a bit strange, because this almost strange person that I invite for like a week to come over, you see. Then Hannah Oswald, for example, was one of the youngest curators living in Ljubljana. but she was really doing a very good job over there. And this is why I invited her as a commentator. At that moment, she must have been 26 or 27 or something. So she was younger than most of the artists that were invited. So artists have to be open to this also, that the younger person can have a knowledge or an ambition that could stimulate the way how they talk about their works. Sometimes it depends also on the specific artist that we have selected. Sometimes I feel I should invite someone more because some of the artists, for instance, have works that are in public space that have to do with urbanization. So I might invite an architect also because of this reason. Why the psychoanalysts? Well, it just comes from the guys that I know. And they are very much interested in art. It's not just because they are psychoanalysts that they're over there, but they're generally interested in art. Some of them are collectors. So for this reason, they know what art is, because this is, of course, the most important topic. But artists sometimes are a bit squeamish when I say that, oh, they are psychoanalysts also. And then they ask, do I have to talk with a psychoanalyst? Is something wrong with me? But they are the professionals. They are the professionals that are used to go in dialogue with other persons. So for this reason, it's another thing that we have learned. We've learned a lot from these psychoanalysts. So what not to do, for instance. So for this reason, it's a mix of persons that are invited as commentators to a portfolio day or to the artist village.
Thank you. Matilda said in the chat that's a really interesting approach. And yeah, I think the main thing that's really useful for the young artists that sometimes maybe feel lost, or maybe not lost, but they can, of course, understand better what's going on and improve their communication with the audience and the institutions. So anybody else wants to ask something, or I can continue with my questions? Lea also says thank you for answering the questions. I wanted to ask about, you mentioned that a big festival that is going on around the whole city. So can you tell us a little bit more about how many locations are usually included, and how do you manage funding of such a big event? And this is the catalog I can show. It's really big.
Yeah, there was a catalog of the last Coup de Ville with the subtitle Chasing Flowers. So as we live in a small city, Sint-Niklaas, with our regular program, but sometimes to get attention, you have to go to a larger scale. And sometimes it comes automatically also. With this larger scale, it makes it more possible to go for funding, sponsorship, etc., and also to get the press. And also it's a formula where we decide to realize a catalog also. So with the text about the artists, younger artists, one of the needs for them sometimes is that there are no text written about their oeuvre. So there's another thing that we try to establish with this exhibition. The locations, the main idea, of course, comes from Jan Hoet. In '86, he organized Chambre d'Amis. At that moment, Jan Hoet didn't have an own museum. So he decided to organize his exhibitions, or did this specific show at locations in private houses. I still find it a very interesting idea, because people open up their houses and you can present art over there. Of course, they're not only private houses. We use abandoned churches also. We use empty stores, shops, etc. The museum is also involved. So it really depends. But in most of the cases, there are about 15 locations. So it's a bit of, I always compare with Modest Mussorgsky, the Russian composer, 19th century, and his pictures at an exhibition. Because the pictures at an exhibition is in fact a kind of tour that he does. And before every painting, he wrote a theme, he wrote a piece of art. But when you do this tour, when you're walking, there are still elements from the previous location or the previous artworks that stay with you, so that go in an interference. And you also notice that people start to walk together and that they discover parts of even this small city where they've never been, are explicitly chosen not only for touristic locations, but also for the backsides, the ugly parts of the city. And of course, the city government didn't like it in the beginning, because you're attracting people. That's very good for this exhibition, but you're also showing our ugly parts of our city. And then I had to change the vocabulary a little bit, and then I said, but they're not ugly places, perhaps now, but you have to see it in time. They are places of potential. And then they agreed. Oh, okay, there are places of potential. Oh, yeah, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. But it also gives like a dynamic. But the ugly places, so to say, are sometimes the most challenging to do something with artists. And of course, it takes a lot of preparation. Artists come on a prospection. They would like to do something at a certain location. And then, of course, we have to find money. And money, that's not always easy. But sometimes you can find materials or companies that can support you with material or with other things. Companies also have more to offer than they think they can offer for art or artists or art pieces. So, and of course, if there's not enough money, yeah, okay, then we have to make choices, of course. Yeah, until now, we've managed to organize it, and we hope to realize another edition of it in 2024. But let's see. Could also be in another in a small village next to Sint-Niklaas. You're not sure.
Good luck. I will follow what's happening with that follow-up. Okay, somebody else has a question. We can also help translating it if somebody doesn't speak English well. Okay, still, Jasna. Unmute, please. Wait, maybe I can unmute. Yeah, I can't. We don't hear you, Jasna. You didn't unmute yourself.
Yeah, I forgot how to unmute myself. I discovered it again. And I wanted to thank Stef and you for this really precious new knowledge about listening. That is more about listening than about speaking. And it was successful since we don't have much questions. So we were good listeners. And really was very happy to spend some time with Stef and you here in Belgrade. And what I have learned is that I should listen more, and that art is maybe more in listening than in talking. But I wanted to ask something since you posed the question. It is the question for Stef. We saw that you are very taking care about raising consciousness about ecological problems that our planet has, and what are the rest of the topics that that can be seen in the what is the kind of art that you prefer in your space, in your gallery? Because we already made the conclusion that it is not something that is copied or that is conceptual art. But what are the main topics? Because when I visited some, for instance, Art Basel, I saw that there are few main topics that were the art was about. Is there something that your gallery prefers?
Yeah, thank you, Vesna. It's a challenging question. To be honest, topics come also from what I see in the studios of artists. So to give you an example, the last Coup de Ville exhibition with the subtitle Chasing Flowers was inspired because several of the visits in the years before that I did at artist studios, I noticed that lots of artists got a new and a special interest in nature and flowers. And this is how I got inspired to work on this topic, to be honest. So it came from the artist also. What I do is indeed listen or watch or observe, and then I can connect it to broader themes. I can challenge the artists also to work on these elements. Yeah, this is showing a work of Nick Erving now. And this is a good example also because Nick Erving is one of the artists in Belgium that is one of the pioneers of working with 3D printers and modeling. So a lot of what he does starts from the computer, but in the end, it ends as a physical sculpture dimension that you can touch, of course. But the elements of the media are quite open. It can be as well drawing, painting, sculpture, installation, video, performance. And I think that I should have more attention for what is happening in new media. So sometimes you notice about yourself also that you should develop also, and that this should be reflected also in the program you have. And for the moment, this technological based or computer based art is still something that I think we should in our location, our organization, pay attention to. Also to younger artists. We already work with young artists, but I think we should, or I should, involve more young artists as curators, as organizers, because this is something that I quite strong believe in, and perhaps it's also a critique towards artists. Artists forget how much they can mean or do for other artists. I'm especially glad about the last portfolio that we organized in May, because several of the artists invited each other to participate at other exhibitions. And this is the whole aim of it. In fact, that artists become more self-sufficient. They don't have to wait for curators, etc. Curators can be a help, but artists underestimate the potential they have themselves to organize events, exhibitions, come together, etc. So, and there's another thing that we try to stimulate. A last element about your question, Vesna, and where I am interested in, and I don't know where it's going to, but is the difference of scales nowadays. So the large scales, the huge periods in time and geography, so the geological time frames, you could say, which at this moment is in fact interfering with the human scale. And so this is why we have the climate change, etc. So the very tiny, the almost invisible, which we know from the pandemic, and the very large scale, how it's spread, this pandemic. So the very tiny scale and the very large scale, these are elements that are not opposed against each other, but that have to find a way to interact with each other. And for me, this is interesting because we're trying to do this at this same moment, because we are a very small organization, but we're an organization based in Belgium, where Brussels is the capital, but it's also the capital of the European Union. And we think we are the center of everything. And we don't know enough about, for instance, the Balkans. This is why I was so eager to visit Serbia. And these kind of asymmetrical elements or positioning or opposition, these are the scales that we have to bring together now in the future. And of course, these are dreams. But as we are here in this Zoom, this might be like a first step. And always believe like in first steps, but you have to keep on stepping, of course. It's not a sprint. We have to be aware about the fact that we always are running marathons. And I myself am more a sprinter, also because I smoke, etc. So I'm not a real marathon man. But even then, even if you're a smoker, even if you're a sprinter, we should think not only in longer term, in time frames, but also in another geographical dimension. This is really what I will try to develop the coming years. Of course, hopefully with the help of all of you.
Thank you, Stef. That was really nice, like almost like a really good conclusion for everything. But I'm not going to conclude this because I also had a few more questions. And before that, I will write again. Matilda said something nice on the chat. She said your answer told her that you are really interested in real art and you don't follow trends. You are looking for that something in art and in emotional way, if she understood correctly. And she's thanking you for that because she thinks that's really, really beautiful. Lea said it is so, so cool. And I want to now continue with something that naturally goes also like continuing my sister's Vesna questions. It's maybe a little bit even more difficult question, but I guess you can say something. It's what is the most important for the artwork itself? So how do you recognize what is good art, if I say it like that?
Well, for me, it's difficult to sometimes separate the artist and the artwork. Of course, there's the art piece that we see, But then I get interested also in the person, because I think that the artwork is also a crystallization of an attitude. And an attitude I don't only want to refer to the identity of the artist. The personality of the artist is part also. But with an attitude, I mean, how does a certain person handle a certain material? So, and from the attempt to read in the art piece, you also read, and if it's a pencil that you're using or a paint that you're using, there's a kind of attitude behind, a way of thinking that is crystallized in the art piece that I am interested in to get to know. So for me, it's very difficult to work with only art pieces because I want the connection with the artist also, if possible. Now, for instance, in the Coup de Ville exhibition, in the Chasing Flowers, there were also artists that were already dead, deceased. But for instance, I chose work by Stefan Bertalan. So he's a Romanian artist. I saw it in a small museum and I found it so interesting. But then, and my wife knows, my daughter knows, then it becomes like really expensive, because then I want to buy all the books about this artist. I want to read, I want people that have known him to tell me about him. So I'm really interested in the attitude behind it also. But this is one of the artists that I've been able to present in this exhibition. Also, an artist who was a botanist in Belgium. She was, yeah, perhaps one of the first women to be in this position, and immediately, yeah, the most famous one. But she was almost not known. So this is also an artist that I was able to present in this last exhibition. So it's about artworks, of course, but then also the crystallization of the attitude of an artist, the way of thinking of an artist that plays a role in it, and sometimes also the position of an artist. So sometimes a forgotten position, or a position in a minority. In the end, of course, it's intuition, but intuition that, of course, comes from a life having looked at art. So, and to describe this intuition, why you find an art piece interesting, is indeed something very difficult to formulate or define. So it's not a complete answer, of course, to your question.
Yeah, no, you answered so good. I didn't expect. I was hoping to get just at least small part of everything, and you really gave a really good answer. I think I'm completely clear and understand more what are you talking about. And
so I passed for exam.
No, you did more than passing of the exam. It's like 10 exams. Some exams there don't exist still. So I'm very grateful for this answer. So are there any further questions from anyone? Ivana Egic, our founder of Art ćakula, Art Talk. So talking from Sweden.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello there. Yeah. I don't have a question, but I have one, maybe two comments. First of all, I would like to thank our guest Stefan, the Belgian curator, to show trust and extremely interesting presentation. We have indeed heard a lot of interesting information about your work and the work of WARP. I believe that interest of many present here tonight has been awakened in some comparison through submission of works or for presentation and participation in your programs. I can say I'm personally I'm very interested, and if is there some possibility, I will send my application. And I'm glad that we got touch through our ćakula and Facebook, and I hope that we will stay in touch and friends on Facebook. And I will say once more thank you. And secondly, Vesna, thank you for bringing us excellent and very important guest for our ćakula and art. And thank you for your excellent moderation. And finally, thank you everyone who is participated in our ćakula tonight and supported our guest and our ćakula itself. So, like very, very interesting. And I'm also sorry that I missed the first 10 or 15 minutes, but I had some problems private. But now I'm here, and I was listening, and it was very, very interesting, and I heard many interesting questions and answers. But how I said, I hope we will stay in touch. Yeah.
Thank you, Jelena. Yeah, I also feel the same. Yeah, Jelena Simic, you want to say something? You raised your hand.
Thank you, Vesna. Thank you, Stef, for most inspiring talk, not presentation, but talk. My question is, because we are doing the similar thing, we are trying to do similar thing here in Serbia. And thank you for presentation of good European practice, how to do with the small means and with a great idea to do something different than the used cultural institutions do with artists. I think after the COVID-19, we faced another thing, and that is that we need to make connection between art theorists and art practices as artists itself. We forgot that link in the previous decades, because art historians, curators were on the pedestals. You know what I'm talking about, here on Balkan as well, not only in Europe. And we need to talk with artists. We need to spend time with artists. We need to be friends with artists. And my main question is how to make it sustainable in a larger scale. I mean, your idea.
How to make it
sustainable.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
So that is always the main challenge, because you can organize meetings, but you have to give something afterwards also. So 2007, we had the first portfolio day that we organized. So some of the artists that got comments at that moment, they developed and they became more experienced artists, more mature, sometimes also with quite a big reputation. And in our system, in our model, they became commentators also. So, and this was a way how we could develop and sustain these relations. And of course, these relations really depend on, even if you work with organizations, depend on a very important piece or part of these connections. And it's just like friendship. Sometimes you lose friends, you don't maintain the relation, and this is really the challenge that we should.
It's a big issue. Yeah, big issue, because we know. Yeah,
but I see that it is possible. I see that it is possible to maintain or develop these relations. For this reason, I'm talking about this recurring status. You meet someone, but you try to organize a next meeting. So, and then people, of course, develop. But yeah, it's already going on now. to my feeling, because Vesna came to Sint-Niklaas 5 years ago. She got in contact with our organization. We were able to do some things for her. Then I went to Beograd, to Belgrade.
Yeah.
And now we're in this meeting, but it will take us an effort, of course, if we want to make this sustainable. And
Exactly.
what we can do, yeah, okay, that is something that we will do. And then we have to try to just keep in touch.
Yes, of course.
And just try to organize things.
Yes. Thank you. You're open a very large scale of possibilities that we should do. And firstly, I want to thank at the end of my speaking right now to Vesna for this opportunity, and also to our Ivana and all our beautiful members of our ćakula. We have new ones here, and new. I saw one new participants as our sculptors, to young person. They are not now here. They're very beautiful, very good artists as well. We have also here a good artists who are doing with the clay, Ljubica and Snježana. They also are wonderful artists. Of course, Ivana, Vesna, Jasna, and we have good base here. And also, if you visit our National Museum here in Belgrade, and have you heard about one movement from the beginning of 20th century? For example, it was an avant-garde movement on the former Yugoslavia. Have you heard about Vesna, da li sam mu rekla sorry, da li ste pričali možda o...
We haven't talked a lot, but he visited the National Museum on his own, and he's still probably settling down all his thoughts, because it was so recent. Few days ago, he came back from Serbia to Belgium.
Okay. Thank you very much, Stef.
So one more question we have here. Thank you, Jelena. And there is a question from Ivana Kutuzovic, also artist. So thank you for interesting information and new insights into viewing art and artists itself. I would like to know, are you working only with young artists or artists of all ages? Thank you.
So an important part of our focus indeed is on what they call emerging artists, ready artists. But it's always like a start for a relation that develops on a very long term. And then you also see that what you can do for an artist, or what the needs are for an artist, they develop also. Of course, we also work with older artists, with more mature artists from my age, for instance. But the needs are different, you see. And we're also not able to realize everything. That's another thing. So, of course, it would be wonderful if we could do something for a specific group of artists, let's say from 70 plus or something. But we're not able to realize everything. But it's possible. You have to understand, of course, also that like artists from the late 20s, early 30s. So this is a group, in most of the cases, we start from, but now some of the artists are already also nearly 50, you see. So it develops. So it's a slice in time, but this develops also. So for this reason, I just try to start from needs for artists, but then also I have these limitations. WAP, as an organization, I work 3/5 for this organization. Of course, the reality is that I work more than a full time. And then there's only one other person who has a part-time. So our organization is, in official terms, is one full-time equivalent. That's it. And then we have our volunteers. And then we also have our board, a very supportive board. And then I come to perhaps the most essential thing. Artists that are involved with us also add or do a lot. So the potential of artists and what they bring in is also a very huge part of who we are as an organization. Yeah? So, of course, perhaps a bit of a focus more emerging, but they develop also. They become older and older also. And then the limitation of us as an organization itself. Yeah? But in the previous, or one of the previous questions also pointed to, sometimes we present artists that are already deceased, you see. So it's not that it's only about younger artists, but a lot of energy goes to these younger artists.
Thank you, Stef. Yeah, we can see, we mentioned how the idea is important, but also effort. Now we can see what is the really ways that are projects being released.
I see this really... comment by Anne van der Linden.
Oh, yeah.
I'm 52 and I was selected for the portfolio days. So Anne, who is also listening now, apparently.
Yeah,
so she was selected also.
Thank you, Anne. Now that's really encouraging. We after 45 plus to know. So thank you. And we also have one more comment. Snježana Pokos-Vujec, that ceramic artist. She said thank you for very interesting art talk, and then other great reactions. Yeah. What Anne also said, that was really important for most of the persons here. So thank you. So we don't have a lot of time left, so maybe I can conclude now this official part. I want once more to thank you, Stef. Dank je wel, Stef. Hvala, Stef. And everybody, all the others that joined, and also the people that will watch this later on YouTube channel. It was a great insight in VARP activities, and thank you for sharing your visions also with us. So I always learn something new from you, so thank you once more. These days we will be following up this event and publishing more photos from the presentations. Also the link we didn't play today, so we will publish it these days on our Facebook and Instagram channels. Of course, recording of this whole art talk will be published on Art ćakula's YouTube channel. We will also present the link through our social media channels. So you can join our community with commenting and checking our content, also visiting website of Art ćakula. There you can find more info and maybe become the member of Art ćakula. So thank you once more. This was 65th edition of ćakula Art Talk, and this was Stef Van Bellingen from Belgium, and in front of VARP platform. So my name is Vesna Opavsky, and I hope to see you all soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.